Thanks for tuning in to the Drive On podcast, where we are focused on giving hope and strength to the entire military community. Whether you're a veteran, active duty, guard, reserve, or a family member, this podcast will share inspirational stories and resources that are useful to you. I'm your host, Scott DeLucio, and now let's get on with the show. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Drive On podcast. Today, my guests, two of them today, are Stu Grazier and David Gutierrez. Both of them recently had me join them on their podcast, which is Filling the Storehouse. And we're fortunate enough to have them both on the show here today to share their experiences in the Navy and what they are up to now. So welcome to the show, guys. I'm glad to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Scott. Hey, I just want to ask one clarifying question before we start. Is this video also?
Yes.
Okay, I just want to make sure because you may want to ask Stu to turn his camera off so you don't lose listeners. It's just a general recommendation I like to make when we're guests, but nothing hard, nothing pressing. I just thought that I should point that out.
Yeah, sure. I kind of was feeling like that probably should have been said before we started recording. I was kind of looking at him like, oh gosh, this might be a bad thing. But
it's good to give your audience a heads up. They can,
yeah,
for your audience. I know you're high class listeners. If you'd like to switch to an audio version only, right now is probably the best time to do that.
Yeah, you might as well just turn off the monitor and just listen to the audio. I think that would be better off.
So I'll go ahead and start this introduction. About myself. So my name is Stu Grazier, and I was born and raised in Texas. Went to the Naval Academy, and David was my roommate for all 4 years in school, and I pretty much had to carry him not only through school, but also through life, through our 20 years of service in the Navy, and then also extending into now our multiple businesses that we have together. I basically just carry him on my shoulders, and he just kind of tags along for the ride. So that's me in a nutshell. I'm married to my beautiful bride, Crystal, for almost 15 years, and I have 2 children, 8 and 5-year-old daughter and son. So that's me.
So you're used to this kind of abuse coming.
I'm used to it. Yeah. He always tries to get in there first and start jabbing, but I come with the right cross.
Yeah.
Guys,
he got me pretty good too before we started recording, just for full disclosure. There's a few Army jokes that were dropped before I even had the opportunity to drop the Navy joke. So
I'm sure there'll be more.
Get it.
I'm sure there'll be more.
Hey, look, gentlemen, and I think I should emphasize that this should be a gentlemanly conversation. Chivalry is not dead. And I do think, look, I believe in honesty. Okay. Like I think that telling somebody something bluntly is actually a compliment because it helps us to fix our deficits and our deficiencies. And I will just highlight Stuart has plenty. So it just is it's a very rich well to continue to go back to. But David Gutierrez, I was also a 20-year Navy guy. As Stu mentioned, we were roommates back at the Naval Academy. I was a cryptologic warfare officer, so did a lot of intel stuff over the years. I've got a wife, Erica, a beautiful wife, 3 beautiful children. My daughter's 11, and then I've got 2 boys, one 9 and one 6. And I thank God for them daily because they help me to become a better person through patience, trials, and it's just a testing that I've never actually I got a good taste of it at the Naval Academy, being Stu's roommate in the last 20 years. I got a good, just like an introductory to what it is to have children. And so I think I've been well trained through our friendship. But all joking aside, Stu's my best friend. We're business partners, and we'll probably get into this, but you have to choose. So I think it's so imperative that you choose your friends wisely. I think it is absolutely critical that you choose partnerships in business with extreme caution, and you give it the diligence, almost like a marriage, right? The almost the same level of diligence that you would give to your future spouse. I think you have to have at least very hard conversations when you're in the dating phase and the courting phase. Like you really need to choose wisely. And I thank God that I believe I did choose wisely. As challenging as it is, I think I made a great choice, which has really played into our transition in military. Again, things we're going to talk about. It's also played into a lot of the outlets that we personally have. As we're talking here today, we're planning on a snowboard trip tomorrow, meeting some men up in the mountains and just doing awesome, fun things. But there's an intent behind all of those things. So that's who I am in a nutshell.
Yeah, and I totally agree with what you were saying there. I think any marriage, business relationship, whatever it is, the 1+1 should not equal 2. That those two people together should be able to feed off each other and create something that's better than each one of them would be able to create individually on their own. And obviously that goes with a marriage. You're not making a kid on your own, obviously, right? So 1+1 can't equal 2 in that situation. You're going to end up making 3 or more potentially. But in a business relationship like the one that you guys have, you each have your own strengths and your own weaknesses, and you should be able to feed off of each other and work through those in a positive way, not be butting heads. Have this relationship where you guys are helping each other, lifting each other up, and growing together. And so I totally agree with what you're saying there. But
and be comfortable celebrating each other, right? Like that should be a thought process. Be comfortable when Stu succeeds, even if it's apart from our business. I should be one of his biggest cheerleaders. I should be the individual that's like, there to cheer him on, but also in the times that aren't that great, to be the person that's there to lift him up potentially, right? And to also be humble enough to allow him to speak that same kind of life into me and enable him to be that person that lifts me up.
I'm just picturing you right now with the skirt and the pom-poms and the cheerleader outfit, and it's pretty. He's not
very good looking in that.
Actually.
It's pretty gross.
Hey, I mean, is how you picture it. Next time we come on a podcast, maybe I'll dress that way and you may be surprised. But there's also, I'm about, I don't know, probably 50 to 70 pounds heavier than Stuart. So that would be an awkward kind of effort on his part too. He doesn't really believe in leg days or shoulder days or even arm days or chest days. So it would probably be a pretty heavy lift, if you know what I mean.
I'm a cardio only kind of guy.
So you guys, you served your time at through college, through the Navy. Did you guys serve together while in the Navy pretty much the whole time, or were you stationed apart at any point?
Yeah, we were stationed apart almost most of our career, honestly. So I was a pilot by trade. I flew helicopters for 10 years. A lot of that was spent in San Diego. And then I transitioned to the Navy calls it FTS, full-time support. The Army calls it AGR, Active Guard Reserve. And I flew C-40s, Boeing 737s. David, he went to cryptology. And so we were in different fields, different lines of work completely. But we did have an overlap of one tour. We both got stationed in Naples, Italy together when we both worked on the 6th Fleet staff and had an amazing time. We all our families were there. We went and traveled together. We served not in the same building, but on the same, base. And so, we went and worked out in the mornings together before we'd go to work, and we'd ride the bus back to, our support site base. And so really, really great time there. And that's kind of when we all started having kind of these conversations. That was about the 14, 15 year mark in our careers. We both kind of knew that we were going to make it to 20, but we both knew that we really wanted to go into business together. We started to have those conversations. Didn't really know what that looked like, but we both had been separately investing in some real estate, and we were comparing notes, and we both had a pretty challenging time with some of our investments. And so that kind of got all the conversations started about doing business together, and we kind of started focusing on real estate at first.
So around that time, you guys are starting to think like the light at the end of the tunnel is coming into focus now. We know there's only a few more years before we're getting out, and you're basically at this point, you're coming up with a plan for what's next, what's next after getting out of the Navy. Was there any like formal processes, or was it just two guys chatting about what the future might look like?
Yeah, it's a great question, and I want to make a couple points clear. So we had a pretty extensive relational background, right? We were Naval Academy roommates. We were best friends once we graduate. We were in each other's weddings, around for each other's kids being born, and all these things, right? Just this very long relationship. But I will say that even we were not intentional necessarily. We were intentional about our friendship, and it was a great friendship, but we were not intentional in diving into, to your point, diving into formalizing business agreements and all these kind of things. Once we decided, we were like, hey man, we both love real estate. We both, are looking at doing something, and there's going to be a transition coming up. Let's prepare ourselves, all these things. We dove we dove very deep in building our relationship very intentionally on the tenets of what a business looks like, right? So we had conversations like, okay, I mean, and I personally think so again, the point to this is you don't have to have a 20-year relationship to have a business partner, but I do believe even if you have a 20-year relationship, you need to be very, very intentional with the conversations that formalizes a partnership. And what that looked like for us is we spent a bunch of time talking about core values. You know, we did a lot of whiteboarding on when things in our business go wrong, and we started thinking about the things that, okay, say we lose money on a deal, say a deal doesn't appraise, like all these things, right? And then we even went into the personal realm of, okay, hypothetically, you know, you're a highly capable dude. Like, what if you have an opportunity that is just is too good to say no to, and it impacts our business, and we have to dissolve our business? Let's talk about that. Are we still friends? How do we effectively break the business up, and how do we separate things, and how do we separate our love for one another as friends and our families from the business? And can we do that? We had those kind of conversations before we ever did a deal, before we borrowed a dime. We had those kind of conversations. And I would encourage folks, if you're looking at business, just because you serve with somebody and they're your brother in arms or your sister in arms, I think those are great foundations. Beautiful. That is probably a pretty good person to explore a partnership with. But I am a huge advocate for diving deep before you sign on a dotted line to connect your lives in a way that is very, very difficult. If your business is doing well and you start growing and you're going in this direction, is a very difficult thing to just kind of move away from, unless you have a very clear understanding of, you know, what that looks like in an exit plan. And we still readdress this. We're still having conversations. This is not a one and done. You know, we just had an interesting conversation about our friendship, but it also plays in our business. And I asked him, like, hey man, how am I failing you as a friend? What are the things I'm doing that are,
it was a long conversation.
It was a long conversation. What are the things that I'm doing
in a lot of ways?
Yeah, a lot of ways. Yeah. Terrible friend. And one of them is that, you know, when you hang out with someone who's better looking than you, like oftentimes it makes you feel bad about yourself and question yourself, right? So Stu has to deal with that every day. And that's not my fault. We had to talk through that. But you know, all joking aside, it's a genuine concern of mine that I am bringing my best self to our relationship and not taking Stu for granted. Just like in my marriage, I'm not that guy that's taking my wife, you know, for granted. And so Stu being my work wife, I have to have the same considerations, and really, like, I can't emphasize this enough. You have to continue to have these conversations, evolve and grow your relationship, because business it's not a playground, right? Like, this is a very serious thing, especially when you get your families tied in and all that kind of stuff. So it's, you know, that was, as we looked to transition and formalize it, back to your question, to formalize these things, the formalizing was relatively easy. You go to a LegalZoom or a whatever, a smallbiz.com, and you put in your LLC and pick a name and all that. We did hours and hours and hours of work before we ever went online to make that commitment.
Yeah, and it's very similar to a marriage, like you were saying before, right? Before you get married, you want to know whether or not the person you're about to get married to wants to have kids, and those contingency plans that you're talking about. Like, what if you can't have kids? You know, if there's some medical issue, you can't have kids. Do you adopt? Do you just not have kids? You know, what is that next one? Do you get a dog? You know, whatever it is, what is that next plan? But you want to have those conversations. I know my wife and I had those conversations before we got married as well, and we just wanted to make sure that we knew what we were getting into before we made that commitment, because I do feel like it's a commitment. You know, same thing with a business relationship. That is a commitment as well. And you don't want to be blindsided by something that is just coming out of nowhere because you hadn't thought of it before. You know, even thinking all the way to, you know, end of life planning, like what is that going to,
we're talking about that now. We're talking about, we need to take action on getting life insurance policies on each other in the business. Yeah. Like, we are having, no kidding, you talk about end of life planning. You don't know when that is or what that looks like. Ideally, it's a long ways down the road, and there's sure. but there's no guarantee, right? It was crazy snow outside today that something could have happened. So one question I do want to emphasize also, that it's introspective, right? And I ask myself this question: does this person make me better? And I can point to some very specific things. Like when Stu and I started talking, dude, I wasn't a podcast listener. I was a pretty avid reader, but I wasn't a podcast listener. I wasn't doing there. There are a lot of things now that are just habitual that I do on a regular basis that were not a part of my life before Stu and I like really started getting, everything kind of tighter and closer. And so Stu oftentimes sends me things and pushes me things and makes recommendations and gives me feedback that make me a better person. That's who you want to be around. Right. And so when you're looking at partnerships, and I would recommend even as friends, assess your friends and who are you hanging out with? Do they make you better? Spend more time with those folks.
Right. Exactly. And when you have someone who is in your corner, who's looking out for you, sending those recommendations like, hey, check out this podcast or read this book or, whatever it is, I think that might help you in this area that I know you're having trouble with. That's the kind of person you want in your corner. You don't want just a drinking buddy that you can go out on the weekends and, grab a beer with. I mean, obviously that's a part of it too at some point, but you want to have that person who also is looking out for you, helps you as a person to grow in your professional, your personal relationships and everything. That's exactly what you're looking for. So, all right. So we talk about getting up to the point where you're getting out of the Navy. What was that transition like when the uniform came off for the last time and you found yourself getting into the civilian world? What was that transition like?
Man, hard. If I wanted to give you one word, hard. And it's interesting because I think David and I thought we had a pretty good run at it as far as preparing for that transition. We really had started our real estate business in 2018. We got out in 2022. So like 4 years in advance. And we started, building this real estate business out. We started purchasing our own real estate to kind of start creating that passive income to, the goal is to replace our military income with our investment income. And we had done a pretty good job of it. And, along the way, our goal of this business was to create relationships and create a community. And what we ended up finding out, well, we found out a lot of things. Job and money, honestly, was probably the least of our concerns. And what we ended up finding out, there's all this other stuff that kind of started coming into play as we took the military uniform off and then just went to civilian world. We really wanted to get focused on being present at home. And so, we did not want to go get another 9-to-5 W-2 job where we were sitting in some desk all day long being a middle manager somewhere. And not that that's wrong. We just it wasn't what we had visioned for our life. We wanted to be able to take the kids to school, pick them up, go to all their events. My kids in preschool, so like pick them up at noon, right, and take them on a dad date and all that kind of stuff. And so for me, and I'll let David kind of speak to it as well. But for me, like I went like all in on like the other side, right? Like I went all in on like just being present and being dad, being home all the time. And for a period that was good, but it was like almost like too much. And, I wasn't getting anything done at work and I had all this time on my hands and I wasn't like putting stuff on the calendar. I wasn't planning out my day. And to go from 20 years of basically everything being handed to you, here's your uniform, here's your duty station, here's your, office, here's your time and place to show up, here's all your meetings, here's your deployment schedule, here's all this stuff, here's your friends, you're going to make friends for 3 years and then you're going to move and then you're going to make more friends. Everything's handed to you on basically a silver platter for 20 years. And then all of a sudden that all goes away and now you're on your own to do everything. Right? To find your own community, to create your own calendar, to build in your scheduled work time, to exercise, to show up for meetings, like all that stuff is on you now. And I didn't know how to do it because no one talks about it. No one teaches you. And so I kind of found myself just like flailing. I found myself just not knowing to do it with what myself like, and then time gets in there and then like stuff you push down for so long starts to come back up and you almost start to feel this like anxiety kind of start to come up. And again, like we were pre-set up for job, for money, for income, and with our retirement, and then eventually our VA disability. Like, honestly, we were financially free, and we didn't really have to work, so to speak. But it was a really interesting discovery that took a while to kind of figure out, and I'm still figuring it out.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing to figure out. Like you said, all of those things are handed to you. Where you need to be, what you need to be wearing, who you need to meet with, and all these things are basically handed to you. You don't get much say in the matter with when it comes to the military. Then yeah, when you get out and you have to figure this stuff out on your own, and figure out that work-life balance where you have a family, you want to spend time with them, but you also have the reality of you have a job and you need to spend time with that as well. It's like, yeah, I'd love to spend my entire day with my kids, going and goofing off and doing fun stuff. Of course I would. Like that, who wouldn't, right? Um, but then they're going to be starving because I won't make any money and there'll be no food on the table, right? So that would be a terrible thing to do. So yeah, you kind of have to figure that stuff out. And you said you're still working on that, but what helped you kind of get to a more balanced way of living?
Yeah, and I'll take this because I think it's for both of us very similar. But what I will say is, and I want to acknowledge a couple things. One, for us to get out at retirement is, there's benefits to that, right? That we have income coming in, we have the VA stuff, and then we had our businesses on the side. But I want to acknowledge that, I get it. Money and job is a concern. What I think most people do when they get out is they make that the concern. And I think that's where we go wrong. They make that the primary effort and they make it the primary focus. And not only until you settle in do you realize all these other things potentially more important, but also they're coming up, right? So for me, I am not an anxious person, never suffered with anxiety. That just wasn't a part of who I am. When I transitioned, and this is relatively recent. So we got out in June. So what, 6-7 months ago, something like that. When I got out, we kind of went through similar phases, Stu and I, but then about a month ago, I started feeling anxiety. And I didn't know I didn't know it as anxiety. My chest started getting tight. I had these breathing issues. It was really strange. And what I came to realize is that there's a lot of things we have pushed down for years, especially, as officers or senior enlisted. You take a lot of burden for your sailors, your soldiers, your airmen. And in the name of leadership, you push forward and you push your stuff down. At least I did. For 20 years, I just buried it. And I didn't think it was a problem. And now that I have this time that I don't have to do that, nor do I have, 300 sailors, things start coming up, serious things, right? My last command, three sailors committed suicide under my command. The pressure of that, not only that, but the families are reaching out to me as a CO directly. They have my cell phone number. They're calling me. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I'm not trained for this, but they're calling and they're just laying all of these burdens, and we sign up for that. But there's a consequence to that if you never process it, which I didn't, that's going to come back. And so what I would say is, yes, money, job, and all these things are important, not only for money, but for purpose. Like Stu and I are now very driven by our purpose in our businesses. And that's a huge focus for us in our mission. But self-awareness, I cannot say this enough. Take the time before you transition out to ask yourself some very difficult questions. And they're not difficult. They're fun questions. What am I passionate about? What do I love? What do I believe my purpose is? What's my why? You go through that little thought exercise and say you start that a year out, man, you may find that you're positioning yourself way better for success because you actually know what you want to do. And then you could pursue whether it's an area. I always tell people, hey, pick an area that you're going to go to or a job, but don't just leave it completely open. If it's a job that you're passionate about, okay, I'll take anywhere in the country for this job. You do that knowingly. Or for me, Colorado was the only option. Like we are going to Colorado and everything else will make it work. But at least there was a very decisive point to that thought process. And then finally, I think what I would recommend highly, I wish I would have known this or someone would have said it because I would have done it. Find a mentor, reach out to somebody who's gotten out and just whatever, go on LinkedIn. If someone reached out to me on LinkedIn and it was like, I'm going to transition, can we just talk a little bit on what I can expect? 100%. I'd be like, yes. At $500 an hour, you can totally come and talk. No, I'm joking. I'm joking. No, if for a veteran transitioning, I would make time in my calendar to talk to that person. I wish I would have known to do that, because I would have done it in a heartbeat. I just didn't know that. I thought I had things lined up, and we did have things lined up, but it still was very difficult to transition because you lose more than a job. Even though I didn't identify myself with my job, with being in the Navy. I'm a naval officer. That's number one. But there's still a part of it. I promise you, there's still a part of it that is, built in. And so there's going to be loss, and you should step into that with your eyes wide open.
Hey, and let me add something, Scott, if you don't mind, to David's comments about, your question was, hey, we're still in this thing, right? Like, we're still trying to figure it out. And David's point of finding a mentor, great advice. I would even go a step further and say, find a community. Not only find like one person that's done it, but surround yourself with a community of people that can like pour into you, right? And that, it might not be one answer to one question, but it could be 10 answers, 10 ideas, 10 thoughts, 10 networks, 10 connections, and if you're in a group, and if you're in a community, and you're in a place where there's like-minded individuals that just want to serve and just want to be there to help, and you can go to them and you trust them and you can be vulnerable. That is a place that can be truly, truly amazing when helping you through this transition. And David and I have been a part of that, and that in itself is the answer, honestly, for me, is helping me realize like tricks and different like ideas and thoughts and strategies, and time blocking calendars, and like just random stuff that like other people will come with an idea, and that helped tremendously for me, and I know it helped for David as well.
Yeah, and having that group of people, that network of people in that community, like you said, they're going to have different perspectives. They all have tried different things, and some of them have worked for them, and some of them haven't. And they've learned and they've grown on their own. But then they can impart that wisdom on you, and you can do the same for them as well. It's not a one-way street where it's just you take. You're getting that benefit from those people, but you're also giving your own advice and your own wisdom from your experiences as well. And when you have that, it's kind of like a business relationship where your strengths and your weaknesses play off of somebody else's strengths and their weaknesses, and you guys rise up together. And similarly, in a community like that, you're able to help everybody succeed and achieve their goals by imparting that kind of knowledge and wisdom on each other.
And I'll tell you one thing about these communities, and I wish someone would have told me this, because it changed my life. But when you're seeking them out, be very intentional and be willing, change your mindset, be willing to pay for it, right? Whether it's coaching or being part of a mastermind or whatever it is, be willing to pay for it, because that adds skin to the game. I spent so much time being like, I don't know if this is worth it. And now I'm like on the opposite side of that, right? Like, I'll just go to the library, I'll check out books, I'll read all this self-help stuff. That's all great. That's a good habit. I think that's good. But when I started paying to be surrounded by people who think very different than me and big, like, quite frankly, just being honest, they thought a lot bigger than I thought. They experienced a lot more than I experienced. When I started considering and being willing to write a check to do that, it changed my life. And so I only say that not because I want you to pay to be a part of our mastermind at all. What I'm saying is, be willing to put skin in the game to change your life in a way that adds jet fuel that you will not be able to achieve through any single book or outside of a community, because those communities, man, they are like ours. I say it every time when I talked to a guy yesterday about it. It's full of ninjas, like ninjas. And it blows me away. I mean, I have to share this story, Army vet. And he actually, when he got on the call yesterday, it was disgusting. He had a West Point shirt on, and I meant to make fun of him about that. This guy runs a business in Chicago, And this is just a level of like that opened my mind yesterday. And he was sharing how, and he wasn't going to share it. I want to make that too. Share your story. So there's another point to that. He wasn't going to share it, but I called on him. I'm like, dude, you got to talk to us because I know you got something. I don't know what it is. He basically is opening his business to a real estate business, and he's housing refugees. So he's a lot of the Afghani and the Ukrainian refugees, they're flowing into Chicago. And so his business, because he's so focused and he went through core values and all these things, he opened it to meet a very specific need, which is feeding a part of him in self-importance but mission driven, and feeding a part of that army side of him. And it's a beautiful story, right? It's a beautiful story, but everybody in that group was now enriched and challenged by what he highlighted. And that's what you get. You get stuff like that. Well, man, that may be, and it could change your life. It got me thinking very differently. And he said they're his best tenants, right? It's like a win-win-win, but it's just when you surround yourself with these kind of people, they're going to, I'm telling you, they will absolutely open your mind and challenge you and potentially give you the path for what it is that you're going to transition into. That'll be very rich, fulfilling, and it saves you a lot of time and a lot of pain in being like, oh my gosh, I just don't know what I want to do.
Yeah. And to that point of, I do want to talk more about your mastermind and what you guys are doing now, but to the point of paying for something, there is I don't know what it is psychologically. There's this weird thing that happens when you pay for something. It doesn't matter how much it is that you pay for. It could be $5 or whatever. When you pay to do something, it has that much more importance to you. I was a part of a group a few years ago that they had free meetings. Like everyone just, come for free. And they thought they'd get more people showing up to the meetings if they just offered everything for free. Well, no, everyone and their brother were signing up to come to these meetings. But then when it came the day of the meeting, nobody showed up. And it was, just like a half a dozen people, maybe at best, were showing up when they were having like 25, 30 plus people who signed up to come. And so they were like, okay, how do we do this and get more people to come? And well, they just started charging $5 for people to come. It's not that they needed the money for it. The event space that they were using was donated to them. It's not like they needed the money. It was just charge the $5 and people will, now they're invested in it, and now they're going to want to come. And so they had fewer signups as far as, it wasn't the 30 plus people who were signing up, it was 15 to 20, but those 15 to 20 people showed up. And so it increased the overall number of people who actually came to these things. So, to
it's
that
fascinating,
point,
right? It's
it
fascinating.
Makes sense, right?
And also, in the $5 example, maybe a little bit different, but if you choose the right group and you potentially pay, you are now getting a level of commitment from whomever it is that you're paying, right? Like you are not, a lot of us, I mean, I don't know, we're church guys, Stu and I are church guys. And a lot of the volunteer men's groups, well, a lot of times the leader in that group, he's volunteer too. And the quality, and I'm not bashing that at all. There's a place for it and I love it. And I've been a part of a bunch, but when push comes to shove, the level of that person's commitment is also very limited because he may have another job. He may do whatever comes up. There's the skin in the game for him is also just not that high. And so again, it just depends on how quickly you want to, how bright of a fire you want to light under this process, right? And how quickly you want to get to where you want to get. And so I think there's a lot of validity in that.
Exactly. So let's talk a little bit about what you guys are doing now. I know you guys briefly mentioned the mastermind, but tell us about your business now and where you guys are helping out people in your community.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate you giving us this platform. So, it was interesting, again, all about this transition that we left military and going into the civilian world. We built these real estate business and we were essentially flipping houses. We were doing 40 to 50 houses a year. We were keeping some rental properties for ourselves. We were selling a lot of rental properties. And honestly, man, it was a full-time job. And we were doing that full-time job while still being in leadership positions in our Navy job before our transition. And we were just running ourselves ragged. I was up at 4 a.m., doing real estate work from 4 a.m. to like 6:30, saying hello to my kids, but then getting out the door, going to my Navy job, doing my Navy job, coming back, eating some food, saying hello, and then getting right back to work after I put the kids to bed. And a lot of times like trying to do work while kind of trying to be present with my family, right? Like I'd have the phone right here trying to answer emails while I'm like eating food and trying to play with my kids at the same time. Like that multitasking thing doesn't work. But we were in another mastermind group. We were paying for coaching as a part of kind of helping us transition. And one of the exercises that they put us through was, close your eyes, imagine yourself 5 to 10 years down the road, and imagine you do nothing different. You don't change a thing about what your life is like right now. What will your life look like in 5 to 10 years in the future? And so I did that for myself. And I honestly, I just saw myself just getting worn down. I saw my wife and my relationship just continuing to go apart and have nothing in common. I just was hustling, grinding, working, trying to provide for my family, trying to make a living. I had no relationship with my kids. I wasn't present at home. I wasn't doing anything with them. I wasn't going to their events. And I just envisioned that happening as I continued to build out this real estate business. At the same time, David and I had a heavy heart to like just build community, build solid relationships. We hoped that we're trying to build relationships through our real estate business, but again, it was very transactional. It was just flipping a house, selling a deal, doing the next deal, and it was very transactional. And so, to make a long story short, we really had to make a change, and we really had to really focus in on what was most important in our life. Our family, our friendship, having fun again. Like we hadn't had any fun in forever. Focusing back on our faith. We built all these businesses around our faith, but then we just were like hustling and grinding, and it wasn't really a part of our lives. And so we kind of slowed down, we pivoted with our real estate business, and we started building out this mastermind group, focusing on 10 areas of our life that we really were missing in our own lives that we knew were very important. And it was all because of that vision that kind of both of us had of going down the wrong direction with our lives. And so we started building out. We invited 10 of our really close friends who we knew would show up and knew have these weekly conversations. It was on Zoom. We just have an hour conversation on Zoom, and we were just diving into these 10 core topics that we knew were important and amazing, just transformative in all aspects of our life. We just built this solid group of men, and David and I started learning and taking away just as much value from those guys as they did for us. And it's just a group of men that I say, I love you to. They are true brothers. And so we started building it out. We've now since have 3 other kind of groups. They're small groups in this mastermind. And we also then started doing retreats. We do 3-day retreats. We just were in Arizona, close to you. And we just, rent out these big Airbnbs, these houses. Men come in, we just break bread, have fellowship, do, something hard, something fun, something educational. We bring in guest speakers. And it's been amazing. It really has. And it's been really the glue that has helped us with our own transition. And we've really, really found our purpose in just helping men refocus on the most important areas of our life and to be the best husbands that they could possibly be, to be the best friends that they could possibly be, and the best dads that they could possibly be. And it's been awesome, man. It really has.
Yeah, and one of the biggest things, or actually a few of the biggest things that are difficulty for veterans who are just leaving the service are things that you're mentioning in this mastermind, is that sense of purpose and the community or the camaraderie or that brotherhood or sisterhood or whatever it is that you had in the military. When you get out and you're all alone trying to figure out things like your schedule, your work-life balance, and all these other things, and it's all gone, right? And it's gone overnight, basically. Like you get your DD 214 and you're out and you're done. You lose all of that stuff. And when you have a group like this, it enables you to get some of that back and be there, be present for your families and your business, your careers, and everything like that. It allows you to put a lot more into perspective because you're not struggling trying to figure out how to get that community back, because you have it kind of built in through these groups.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize a couple points. We're also, we are we call ourselves kinetic men, right? Kinetic being the opposite of potential. We're action takers. So we have we're very, very, very intentional, not only in the curriculum that we built, but in driving ourselves and challenging the men in the group to take action on things. So it's not like, there's a time and a place for kumbaya sessions. And part of that is built in to what we do. We have a kumbaya session. We talk through things, get different perspectives, all very powerful. Just opening your mind to other perspectives and hearing people that you respect talk about their perspectives is hugely beneficial. But then the big focus where we spend the preponderance of our time is, okay, so what are we doing about it? What are the action steps that we're taking? Okay, I want to be a better dad. Everybody wants to be a better dad. That sounds great. Like that. Yep. Obvious. I want to be a better businessman. Awesome. Me too. Yep. Sounds great. But really, okay, what am I doing? What is on my calendar every single day to be a better dad? What are the things I'm doing to be a better husband? Okay, I'm committing to this group to take my wife on dates. Awesome. Report back and let us know how it goes and give us ideas to incorporate in our own lives. And so the group is filled with these examples of men doing things that are no kidding, benefiting themselves and those around them, because it's all about action. It's all about intentionality. And that's when I say, when you pick a group, you want to pick somebody or a coach that you want to be like, that is pushing you to be closer to the person that you want to be. And it has to be explicitly stated that this is what we do. And so, Stu and I, these businesses, we're so passionate about seeing other men achieve that and we're doing, our one-on-one coaching. That's something else that's coming out of this, is because we're passionate about making ourselves available. And if that's free, like you pointed out, then not only am I not honoring my family, but the skin in the game is not there to make the changes that we're saying are important to us. And so I think it all goes back to this: how do you become the best person possible? And how do you do that as quickly as possible? Do you do it with somebody or with a group of people that are doing it? That's how you do it. And you put it into action.
Yeah. And I think that action is the key component there, because you can talk about 100%. Things all you want. You can go on social media and see people talking about things all the time and
all day.
They're not doing anything about the things that they're talking about. Or some of them maybe, but all you're seeing is just the people talking, and they're not showing the end results. This is the result of these actions, these specific actions that I took to get better in X area of my life. And so, yeah, you can talk about things until you're blue in the face, but talk is, well, like they say, talk is cheap, but like, what are the actions that you're going to put into this to actually achieve the goals that you're trying to achieve, right?
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I wrote something down earlier in the conversation, and I don't want this to be misconstrued, but I wrote, I find shallow relationships to be exhausting. And it's an interesting shift, because I'm a very we're always doing stuff. We're very social. Like I'm an extreme extrovert, and I get energy by being around people. And what I realized recently, because I am surrounded by such high caliber individuals by design, right? By design, we've set the boundaries up that the dudes that are funneling towards us are ninjas. And now when I talk about, if someone just wants to talk weather and football and gas prices, I'm just like, man, I feel like, for me personally, I feel like I'm watching TV. Like it's just, I feel like time is passing and I'm not really accomplishing anything. And I'm not trying to say that to be as a pejorative to anybody or to bash relationships or anything like that. It's just, when you get a taste of what life could be and who you could spend it with, and these people that you're hanging out with are so much better than you in so many ways, it makes all the other stuff just feel cheap, right? It makes that experience, and anybody could have it. You just literally have to choose to put your energy somewhere else. That's it. If you're scrolling on Facebook, like I found Facebook to be exhausting for me, and I found LinkedIn to be something that, because I'm reaching out to people on LinkedIn and getting on the phone and talking to them and doing Zoom calls. And so it's giving me energy, and I'm meeting some amazing, incredible people. I wasn't finding that on Facebook. I'm not bashing Facebook. I'm just saying I made a very intentional choice to be like, okay, I'm not being fed here. I'm not being fed in these conversations or these relationships. And Stu, I didn't want to do this publicly, man, but I'm breaking up with you. I'm sorry. I didn't want to do this on I'm just kidding. But in all reality, man, it can be, I want to encourage your listeners. It can be so amazing and fulfilling. And it's right within your grasp. It could literally be a phone call away, one hello away from an amazing experience to challenge you to be the person that you want to be. And I think that's what's amazing about it. And that's what makes the transition bearable. That's what makes the transition even exciting. For me personally, it's exciting because now I'm using this time and capacity to build these other relationships that are all purpose driven. They're all mission driven. We're trying to accomplish a thing. And that's what's exciting about it.
Yeah. And it's not just bearable. It makes it successful. And you have these relationships, these people in your life who are going to help propel you forward in whatever aspect of your life. That it's going to help you. First off, you're accountable to those people. They're going to ask you, okay, what are you doing? Like you said, I want to, take my wife out on dates more often. Okay, well, report back. You don't typically have somebody to report back to if you're not intentional about finding these relationships in these communities of people. And so then it's easy to just let things slip because, oh, well, something else came up and it's easier to just not do it this week or this month or whatever. So yeah, absolutely. Having these communities, I think is super important for the listeners who are out there who want to maybe check out your mastermind and everything that you guys are doing. Is there a place that they can go to check that out?
Yeah, for sure, man. So, a part of our discovery and David hit on a little bit is just the self-awareness and, figuring out who you are as an individual and figuring out what your purpose is in life. And again, this was an idea from another member of our mastermind group in a, deep conversation. The question was, well, what's your role? Define your role as a dad, a husband, a friend. What is that role, right? And so we actually came up with an exercise, and we want to give that out as kind of just a free resource to go through, where it just asks that question, like, what define your role as a dad. Name 3 things, and then what does that look like? Action steps. What are you doing to fill that role? What can you put on the calendar? What can you be held accountable to? And it's a really fun exercise and resource. I want to make that available, to your listeners. You can go to storehouse310.com/roles and they can get that for free. So that's one way they can kind of just dig into just the self-awareness piece. Like you said earlier, you were a guest on our podcast. We have a podcast called Filling the Storehouse. It's on all kind of major sites, iTunes, Spotify, Castbox, all those. And then our main website is just storehouse310.com, and they can find out all about the podcast, our mastermind, and then, anything else that they want to, dig into.
And if you're local to Colorado,
yeah.
We every Thursday it's a meetup. Just go to our meetup page. We do something. We just get together, and this is 100% purely to build community.
Yep.
This isn't a mastermind commitment. There's no commitment. It's we do coffee. We'll sometimes go to a brewery, have beer and a lunch. Tomorrow we're going to Keystone to go snowboarding. So when this comes out, it'd probably be out of the snowboarding season almost, but the point is, we go mountain biking, we transition to hiking. So we're doing things locally here in Colorado every Thursday. And it's just it's an opportunity to show up and be with some dudes that are like-minded, and you can have some really good conversation. So that's another resource out there.
Yeah. And there's a banner at the very top of our website, Scott, that just will get you to the meetup page, for those that are local to Colorado.
Excellent. So if you're local to Colorado, check that out. Get involved with a group of guys who are out there getting outside, doing some physical activities, maybe meeting up for coffee or a beer or something like that.
Having fun, man. Like having
enjoying
fun, right?
life.
Like,
right?
Yeah, enjoying life. Like a lot, I think, and that was a big, we forgot to do that for a while, right? So that, like, go have fun.
Yeah, exactly. Don't let work consume your entire life. Like there are bigger and better things that are out there. Not to say, slack off at work and don't do your job and things like that. Like that's obviously not what I'm talking about here, but there are other things in life that you can focus on and actually enjoy all of that so that you don't get to the end of the road and look back and be like, oh my God, all I did was worked myself literally to death. And what do I have to show for it? No relationships, no family, nothing good came out of that other than, a healthy looking bank account that you can't take with you anyway. So what difference does it make? Right.
Exactly.
So again, storehouse310.com is the website. I'll have that linked in the show notes. Guys, it's been a great conversation. I really do enjoy you guys and the conversation that we had on your podcast. I'm going to also link to that in the show notes as well, so people go check that out. I enjoyed that conversation. I enjoyed this conversation as well. And you guys are out there just crushing it. So, keep doing what you're doing. I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to come on and sharing your stories, but really appreciate it. Thank you.
Hey, Scott, thank you, man. Thank you for honoring us with having us on your show and having us be able to engage with your audience. And thank you for what you do, man. I'm just inspired by you. I love your mission. I love your passion. I love what you're doing. And so I wish you the best. I wish you growth on the podcast and blessings, everything you're doing, brother. Thank you.
All right. Thank you.
See you.
Thanks for listening to the Drive On podcast. If you want to support the show, please check out Scott's book, Surviving Son, on Amazon. All of the sales from that book go directly back into this podcast and work to help veterans in need. You can also follow the Drive On podcast on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and wherever you listen to podcasts.